We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the bottom of our own ocean. At 36,000 feet deep, the pressure in the Mariana Trench is over 8 tons per square inch. It's like having an elephant stand on your thumb. Nothing should be able to survive down there. But 3 days ago, the USS Triton, a nuclear submarine, vanished near the trench. Just before it lost contact, it sent one final sonar image. It didn't show rocks, it didn't show a whale, it showed a massive organic shape moving up toward them. Our mission was simple: dive to the bottom, locate the Triton, and recover the black box. I climbed into the DSV Atlas. It was a titanium sphere, barely big enough for 3 people. "Check the seals," Captain Miller ordered. I ran my hand along the cold metal of the hatch. This 4-inch thick glass was the only thing separating us from instant death. If the hull cracked down there, we wouldn't drown. We would be imploded, crushed into the size of a soda can in a millisecond. The crane lowered us. The water rushed over the viewport. We were going down. The first 1,000 feet are easy. You can still see the sun. But as we crossed the 3,000-foot mark, we entered the midnight zone. The blue faded to gray and then to total, consuming black. "Lights on," Miller said. I flicked the switch. The exterior floodlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing. Just endless particles of marine snow, dead organic matter falling from the surface like dust. We were falling through a void. It felt like space, but heavier. The sonar pinged rhythmically. Ping, ping, ping. Whatever took the Triton was waiting for us in the dark. At 20,000 feet, we saw the first sign of the wreck. "Debris field," I called out. Twisted sheets of steel drifted past our window, falling slowly toward the bottom. I saw a uniform jacket, a coffee mug. The Triton hadn't just sunk, it had been ripped apart. Submarines are built to withstand incredible pressure. For it to shatter like this, something must have breached the hull. "Look at the metal," Miller pointed. The steel edges weren't bent inward from pressure, they were bent outward. Something inside the submarine had exploded or tried to get out. We were passing 30,000 feet, almost at the bottom. "Contact at 3 o'clock, the pilot whispered. I looked out the starboard viewport. A faint blue light was pulsing in the distance. "Is that the Triton?" "No," Miller said. "It's moving." The light drifted closer. It was beautiful, hypnotic. Then a row of teeth appeared behind the light. Needle-sharp, translucent teeth the size of knives. A massive deep-sea predator brushed against our glass. It was blind, hunting by vibration. It didn't care about us. It was running from something bigger below it. Thud. The landing skids hit the silt. We had touched down. Challenger deep. The deepest point on Earth. "Systems check," Miller said, his voice shaky. The exterior temperature was near freezing. The pressure was maximum. I turned the spotlight forward. There it was, the USS Triton. It was lying on its side, half buried in the grey mud. It looked like a dead whale. But as we got closer, I saw the hole in the side. It was massive, and around the edges of the torn metal, there was a strange, glowing green slime. "Sonar contact!" the pilot yelled. Directly underneath us. Miller navigated the Atlas closer to the breach. The hole in the Triton's hull was 20 feet wide. "Look at the edges," I whispered. The steel wasn't bent, it was melted. Thick, neon green sludge was clinging to the jagged metal. It pulsed slowly, like it was radioactive. "That's impossible," Miller said. "No torpedo leaves residue like that. It looks like digestion." He was right. It looked like stomach acid. Whatever attacked this sub didn't just ram it, it bit it. It tasted the titanium shell and spat it out to get to the soft center inside. The Atlas was too big to fit inside the hole. We had to send the drone. I grabbed the joystick controller. "Deploying little eye," I said. The ROV detached from our hull. On my monitor, the view shifted to the drone's camera. The image was grainy and green. I steered the little robot into the black abyss of the Triton. Inside, the water was murky. Papers, clothes, and tools floated in the zero-gravity stillness. It was a tomb. "Heading for the command center," I said. "If the black box is anywhere, it's there." I navigated the drone through the twisted corridors. "Wait," Miller said. "What is that?" A shape drifted into the drone's headlights. It was a man, a sailor in blue coveralls. He was floating vertically, his arms drifting at his sides. But he wasn't decomposing, and he wasn't crushed by the pressure. I zoomed in. He was encased in something, a clear, gelatinous membrane like an egg sac. It covered his face, preserving him perfectly. His eyes were open, white and staring. He's not floating, I realized. He's anchored. Thin, sticky threads attached his cocoon to the ceiling. He was being stored. I pushed the drone further into the mess hall. I gasped. It wasn't just one body. The room was full of them. Dozens of crew members hung from the ceiling in their translucent sacks, swaying gently in the current of the drone's thrusters. It looked like a spider's pantry. In the center of the room, growing out of the floor, was a massive mound of that green sludge. It was throbbing rhythmically. "Radiation levels rising," the pilot warned. The drone's camera started to glitch. Static lines cut across the screen. "Get the black box and get out," Miller ordered. "This isn't a wreck site, it's a larder." I steered the drone toward the back of the sub, looking for the server room. The path was blocked by a heavy, watertight door. It was sealed tight. I was about to turn around when the audio sensors picked up a sound. Clang, 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 rhythmic, metallic, deliberate. I froze. Clang, 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 clang. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. "Someone is alive in there," I whispered, my skin crawling. "Impossible," Miller said. "They've been down here for 3 days. The air ran out yesterday." But the banging continued. Someone or something was knocking from the inside. Miller argued against it. "It's too dangerous. The structural integrity is compromised." "There is a survivor," I snapped. "We are obligated to try." He gritted his teeth and maneuvered the Atlas. We lined up with the Triton's emergency escape trunk. It was located just above the watertight door where the knocking was coming from. Clunk, hiss. The magnetic clamps engaged. We achieved a hard seal. "Pressure equalized," the pilot reported. "We are dry." We grabbed our flashlights and the first aid kit. We were leaving the safety of our bubble and climbing into the grave. The hatch wheel spun with a groan. When it popped open, the smell hit us first. It didn't smell like a normal submarine diesel and sweat. It smelled like low tide, rotting kelp and ozone. We dropped down the ladder into the darkness. The floor was tilted at a 45-degree angle. We had to grip the pipes on the walls to keep from sliding down into the flooded section. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed in the steel tube. "Clang, clang!" The banging answered. It was coming from the heavy steel door right in front of us. "Hang on," I yelled. "We're opening the door!" Miller and I heaved against the door handle. It was stuck. With one final shove, it swung open. We shined our lights inside. It was a dry storage locker. Sitting in the corner, shivering violently, was a man. He was wearing a commander's uniform. "Vance?" I asked. It was the captain of the Triton. He looked up at us. His skin was paper white. His eyes were dilated so wide they were almost entirely black. In his hand, he gripped a heavy pipe wrench. He'd been hitting the wall with it for days. He didn't look relieved to see us. He looked terrified. "No," he whispered. "You shouldn't have come." "We're here to get you out, Commander," I said, reaching for his arm. He flinched away. "Don't touch me. Sir, the air in here is toxic." "We need to move." Miller checked Vance's vitals. "His pulse is 160. He's burning up." Vance grabbed my collar, pulling me close. His breath smelled like that green sludge outside. "It's not a rescue," he hissed, his eyes manic. "It's a carrier. It let me live. It wanted me to make noise." "It wanted you to come down here." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "To feed it," Vance whispered. "It needs fresh meat." Before I could ask what he meant, Vance bent over and started coughing. It sounded wet and tearing. "Hack! Gag!" He vomited onto the metal deck. It wasn't bile. It was a thick, glowing green slime. Miller backed away in horror. "What is that?" I shined my light on the puddle. Inside the glowing slime, something was moving. Tiny, translucent worms were wriggling in the fluid. Then Vance looked up. His eyes had changed. The pupils were gone. His irises were swirling with green light. He smiled, but it wasn't Vance anymore. "Thank you for the ride," he said in a voice that sounded like gargling water. Then he lunged at Miller. Vance hit Miller like a freight train. They slammed into the bulkhead with a sickening crunch. Miller was a big guy, but Vance, who had been starving for 3 days, tossed him like a rag doll. "Get off me!" Miller screamed, struggling to keep Vance's snapping teeth away from his neck. I swung my heavy flashlight and cracked it against Vance's skull. Whack! It should have knocked him out. Vance didn't even blink. He just turned his head slowly toward me. The bone in his forehead was dented, but there was no blood, just green ooze seeping from the wound. "Pain is a signal," Vance grinned, blood and slime dripping from his teeth. "We turned it off." He lunged at me. I kicked him in the chest, sending him stumbling back into the darkness. He let out a sound that I will never forget. It wasn't a scream, it was a wet, chattering screech. His jaw dropped open, way past the limits of human anatomy. The skin of his cheeks tore. Inside his throat, I didn't see a tongue. I saw a cluster of green, fleshy tendrils writing around. He wasn't human anymore. He was a suit, a meat suit being driven by the colony inside him. "Run!" I grabbed Miller by the harness. "Get to the ladder!" We scrambled up the tilted corridor to the escape trunk. I shoved Miller up the ladder first. "Go! Go!" I followed right behind him, my boots slipping on the wet rungs. I risked a glance down. Vance was coming. He wasn't climbing like a person. He was scuttling up the walls of the shaft like a gecko, his limbs bent at impossible angles. He screeched again, inching closer to my feet. I reached the top and hauled myself into the airlock. Miller was already spinning the wheel to seal the hatch below us. Vance's hand, fingernails torn off, shot through the gap, grabbing the rim of the hatch. "He's blocking it!" Miller yelled. I stomped my heavy boot down on Vance's wrist. Bone crunched, but he didn't let go. He just laughed from the darkness below. We both slammed our weight against the heavy steel door. Slam! The hatch cut through his forearm like a guillotine. The hand fell to the floor of our airlock, twitching. Miller spun the locking wheel. Spin. Click. Sealed. We collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Through the small glass porthole in the hatch, I saw Vance's face press against the glass from the other side. He smeared green slime over the window, watching us. We crawled back into the Atlas cockpit. "Detach!" I yelled to the pilot. "Get us off this thing." The pilot flipped the release switch. Clunk, whir, grind. The Atlas shuddered, but we didn't move. "I'm getting a fault reading," the pilot said, sweat beading on his forehead. "Clamp 2 isn't releasing." I looked at the external monitor. The docking clamp was coated in the green sludge. It had hardened like glue in the cold water. We were stuck. "Try manual override!" "I am!" the pilot shouted. "It's jammed!" We were tethered to the Triton, and on the sonar screen, a massive red dot appeared. The thing that sank the submarine was coming back to finish the meal. The sonar screen turned solid red. The object was too big to track. "Kill the lights," Miller whispered, terrified. I flipped the switch. We went dark. But outside, the ocean lit up. A soft, pulsing violet light began to glow around us. Something massive was gliding past our hull. It blocked out the water. It was a wall of translucent muscle and ancient scars. Then it stopped. Directly in front of our viewport, a membrane slid back. An eye opened. It was the size of a garage door. It had a horizontal pupil that glowed with hypnotic, swirling colors. It wasn't just an animal. It was a god, and it was looking right at the little metal tick attached to its meal. The Leviathan didn't attack us. It ignored us. It wanted the Triton. Massive coils, thick as redwood trees, began to wrap around the hull of the sunken nuclear sub. We felt the impact instantly. The Atlas was jerked sideways violently. Screech! The sound of tearing metal filled the water. The creature was tightening its grip on the Triton, crushing the nuclear sub like an empty beer can. Since we were clamped to it, we were being shaken to pieces. "Hull integrity at 80%, the pilot yelled over the alarms. "It's crushing the host sub." Then the floor dropped out. The creature didn't just crush the Triton, it started to move. It was dragging the wreckage and us across the ocean floor. We were being pulled toward a massive fissure in the trench, a drop-off that went even deeper than Challenger Deep. "Depth is increasing!" the pilot screamed. 36,500! 37,000! We were going past our crush depth. The titanium frame of our sphere groaned. It sounded like a gunshot. "We're going to implode!" Miller yelled. "Blow the bolts! Use the emergency explosives!" The pilot fumbled for the emergency release key. I stared at the viewport. The pressure outside was now 9 tons per square inch. T-I-N-K. A sound like a pebble hitting a windshield. In the center of the 4-inch thick glass, a tiny white line appeared. A hairline fracture. "The glass is going!" I screamed. If that window failed, we wouldn't even have time to feel pain. The water would enter at supersonic speed and turn us into liquid. Zap! The line grew longer, branching out like a spiderweb. It blew the clamps! The pilot turned the key and hit the red button. Boom! The explosive bolts on the docking collar detonated. The shockwave hit us like a hammer. The Atlas was thrown backward, tumbling through the black water. We spun uncontrollably, but we were free. Through the spinning viewport, I caught one last glimpse of the USS Triton. It was being dragged down into the glowing green fissure by the Leviathan. The hull finally gave way, imploding with a dull thud that shook the water. We were alone in the dark, tumbling, with a cracked window and a dead engine. We fell for what felt like an eternity. The depth gauge error ed out at 40,000 feet. We were off the charts. "Brace for impact!" I yelled. Crunch! The Atlas hit a rock shelf. The impact threw me against the control panel. We slid across the jagged stone, metal screeching against rock, before coming to a halt dangerously close to another drop-off. The cabin went dark, save for the emergency red lighting. Silence. All I could hear was the hissing of a ruptured oxygen scrubber and Miller's ragged breathing. "We're alive," the pilot whispered, checking the hull status. "But the ballast tanks are ruptured. We can't go up." I unbuckled and checked the viewport. The spiderweb crack held, but just barely. In the center, a single bead of water squeezed through the glass. Drip. It hit the floor deck. That single drop represented the entire weight of the Pacific Ocean trying to get in. "Don't touch the glass," I ordered. "Don't even breathe on it." "Sir," the pilot said, his voice trembling, "look at the sonar. We aren't on a natural shelf." I looked at the screen. The topography wasn't random rocks. It was lines, straight, geometric lines. "Turn on the external floods," I said. "I want to see where we landed." The floodlights buzzed to life, cutting through the cloud of silt we had kicked up. We waited for the dust to settle. Slowly, the landscape revealed itself. We were sitting on a wide, flat plaza made of black stone. "Is that basalt?" Miller asked. "Volcanic formations?" "No," I whispered. "Look at the seams." The stones were cut, perfect, interlocking hexagon blocks, each one the size of a bus. This wasn't a geological formation, it was a road. A massive, paved road leading toward a green glow in the distance. We hadn't crashed into a trench, we had crashed onto a patio. I adjusted the spotlight, aiming it down the road. My breath caught in my throat. Rising out of the darkness were towers, massive, twisted spires that spiraled up into the black water like drill bits. They were huge skyscrapers built by giants. The architecture was wrong. The angles hurt my eyes just looking at them. It was organic and industrial at the same time. And pulsing through the veins of the black stone was that green sludge. The whole city was alive, breathing with bioluminescence. "The necropolis," Miller murmured. "The Leviathan didn't take the Triton to eat it. It took it there." The wreck of the Triton was lying at the gates of the largest structure, like an offering. Suddenly, the comms system shrieked. Static burst through the speakers, followed by a low, rhythmic thrumming sound. "Vrum! Vrum!" It vibrated the deck plates. The drop of water leaking from the window danced on the floor. "Is that the Triton's black box?" Miller asked. "No," the pilot said, staring at the frequency analyzer. "It's coming from the city, from the central spire." The signal was structured, mathematical. It wasn't a distress call, it was a command. And as the sound washed over us, I felt a sharp pain behind my eyes. The same green veins I saw on Vance's neck, I could feel them throbbing in my own temples. The sound wasn't coming his voice flat. "The signal took him. I thought Miller saved us." But then he stood up and walked past me. He didn't look at the pilot. He didn't look at me. He walked to the rear airlock where the ADS, atmospheric diving suit, was clamped. "Miller, what are you doing?" "I need to see," he said, his voice monotone. "I need to see the spire." He began climbing into the heavy robotic exoskeleton. The suit was rated for extreme depth, but not this depth. "You'll die out there, Miller. The suit will crush." He didn't listen. He sealed the helmet. The internal lights of the suit flickered on, illuminating his face. He was crying, but he was smiling. I watched on the monitor as the airlock cycled. Hiss, clunk. Miller stepped out onto the ocean floor. The ADS suit groaned under the pressure, 40,000 feet of water pushing against the joints. But it held. He didn't look back at the Atlas. He began to walk. Clump, 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 clump. He marched down the geometric road, heading straight for the massive central tower of the necropolis. "Miller, come back!" I yelled into the radio. Static answered. Then Miller's voice cut through. "It's beautiful, Jack. The geometry, it sings." I watched his lights fade into the green fog. I was alone in the dark with a dead pilot and a cracked window. The warning alarms were screaming, but I could barely hear them over the sound of the water. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The droplet wasn't dripping anymore. It was spraying. A razor-thin jet of water, pressurized to 8 tons per inch, shot through the crack. It hit the dead pilot's chair and sliced the steel headrest cleanly in half. It was a water laser. If I moved in front of it, it would cut me in two. The water level was rising at my feet. The electronics were sparking. The Atlas was dying. I looked at the depth gauge, 41,000 feet. I had one chance. The chemical ballast blow. It was a suicide maneuver at this depth, but staying here was certain death. I crawled across the deck, keeping my head low. The water jet was widening, spraying a mist that froze instantly on the metal walls. I reached the engineering panel. There it was, the dead man's switch. It triggers a chemical reaction in the ballast tanks, creating massive amounts of gas instantly to force the water out and rocket the sub to the surface. Usually you ascend slowly to avoid the bends. This would be like being shot out of a cannon. I smashed the safety glass with my elbow. Blood ran down my arm. "Here goes nothing!" I screamed. I yanked the lever down. The sub bucked like a wild horse. Boom! The chemical charges detonated. The ballast tanks purged instantly. Gravity shifted. I was slammed into the floor. The Atlas shot upward. We weren't floating. We were flying. The green glow of the necropolis faded into the black below us. We passed the crash zone. We passed the midnight zone. The hull groaned. The rapid change in pressure was stressing the metal even more than the depth. I held onto the console, praying the window would hold, but the crack was growing. It looked like a lightning bolt frozen in glass. It was creeping toward the edge. My body felt like it was expanding. The rapid ascent was causing nitrogen bubbles to form in my blood. The bends. It felt like there was broken glass in my joints. My vision blurred red as capillaries in my eyes burst. I screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of the rushing water outside. Depth, 20,000, 10,000, 5,000. We were rising too fast. Suddenly, the viewport gave way. It didn't shatter completely, but a chunk of glass blew inward. Freezing ocean water slammed into me, filling the cockpit up to my chest in seconds. I gasped for air, finding only salt water and foam. Crash! We hit the surface. The Atlas flew out of the water, airborne for a terrifying second, before slamming back down into the Pacific waves. I was thrown against the ceiling, then dropped into the flooded cockpit. I coughed up water, gasping for real air. The hatch popped open automatically. I clawed my way out, tumbling onto the roof of the sub. The sky was grey. Rain lashed my face. The ocean was empty. No Triton, no Miller, no Leviathan. Just me, floating in a broken tin can in the middle of nowhere. I laughed. I had made it. But then, I felt a twitch in my cheek, a ripple under my skin. I drifted for 6 hours. Hypothermia was setting in. My hands were numb. Then I heard the chop of rotors. A spotlight cut through the rain. A Navy Seahawk. I waved my arm weakly. A diver dropped from the sky, splashing into the waves. He swam to the sub and banged on the hull. "US Navy rescue! Can you move?" "Yeah," I croaked. He harnessed me up. As we lifted off the water, I looked down at the Atlas. It was already sinking, taking the dead pilot and the secrets of the trench back down to the dark. I thought I was safe. I was wrong. I woke up in the med bay of the USS Reagan, but it wasn't a normal recovery room. I was surrounded by thick plastic sheeting. The air smelled of bleach and ozone. Beyond the plastic wall, I saw doctors. They weren't wearing scrubs. They were wearing full biological containment suits. "Hey," I yelled, sitting up. "Where is Miller?" "Did you find Miller?" A doctor stepped up to the plastic. His face was hidden behind a respirator mask. "Lie down, son. Your vitals are unstable." "I have the bends," I said. "I just need a hyperbaric chamber." "It's not the bends," the doctor said quietly. "We found something in your blood." The doctor held up a vial. "This came out of your arm an hour ago." I squinted at it. The liquid inside wasn't red. It was a dark, oily purple, and it was moving. It swirled against the glass, climbing the sides of the vial like a trapped insect trying to escape. "It's rewriting your DNA," the doctor said, his voice trembling. "It's replacing your red blood cells with that." I looked at my arms. The veins in my wrists were darkening. They looked like black ink lines drawn under my skin. I didn't feel sick. I felt strong. I ripped the IVs out of my arm. "Don't move," the doctor shouted. I stumbled into the small bathroom attached to the cell and locked the door. I needed to see. I looked in the mirror. My skin was pale, almost translucent. I could see the black veins pulsing in my neck. But it was my eyes that made me scream. My pupils were gone. In their place were horizontal rectangular slits. Octopus eyes. The deep-sea pressure hadn't crushed me because I wasn't entirely human anymore. The signal from the city, it was an upgrade. The panic faded instantly. A wave of calm washed over me. I heard the hum again. Vrum, vrum. It wasn't painful this time. It was a lullaby. Miller was right. It was beautiful. I looked out the porthole at the dark, infinite ocean. The doctors were banging on the door, trying to break in. They wanted to study me, to dissect me, but they wouldn't get the chance. I knew where I belonged. The city was waiting, and I had a lot of work to do to prepare the surface world for their arrival. I unlocked the door and smiled. The end.